Well, good morning and welcome to Facebook Live with Tom and I. I'm really delighted this morning that we can talk to you about hospitality, how it has impacted our lives and our marriage over the last 30 years. But I think that before we get on to talking about that, Tom, let me ask you, when you think about hospitality, what is the story in the Bible that most impacts you?
Oh, actually, it's one that most people have not read with care. It's John 21. The resurrected Christ is sitting on the beach. He's made a fire. He has some bread, and some of his disciples who'd gone back to fishing came in with a load of fish, and they brought the fish, and he invited them to come and enjoy the hospitality of a breakfast meal right on the beach. And I'm sure they were awestruck because they hadn't realized that this Christ had risen again. And the first thing he did was to fix breakfast for those people that he loved and cared about.
Somebody once described it to me as having barbecue on the beach with your friends.
There you go.
And I've never been able to, every time we have a barbecue, I think about that. And I think that this is kind of having, in a way, not breakfast, but whatever meal it is on the beach with our friends. And I just love that imagery that goes with that.
Well, and we practice hospitality here at Mustard Seed House. But one of the books that has impacted me is called Making Room, and it's by another Christine Pohl. And it is...
Let me hold it up while you talk.
Yeah. What is remarkable is that she points out in the first century church, after the risen Christ had gone, the church started growing rapidly. And worship was very much a part of it, but so was hospitality, because they weren't worshiping in big church buildings yet. They were networks of families and homes. And what was radical, for the first time, I'm sure, in the history of this planet, people started coming together. Followers of Jesus came together across race, national identity, socioeconomic standing, and they became a new family. And what they loved to do was, as followers of Jesus, was to be the hospitality and love of Christ to their neighbors everywhere that they grew and expanded. So the church was known by its hospitality, and it didn't have the breakdown that we have in many of our churches today between race, class, culture. And they were a loving community, and we aspire and urge others to aspire to rediscover the hospitality of Jesus in times like these.
Oh, I agree. And also, let me just say, if you have any comments or any questions, please add them in the comments here, because I've got my phone open. And I can respond to any comments or any questions that you might have as we go through this. And I know that a lot of people usually watch this after we've done it, but you can still put the comments and I'll notice them later and look at them like that. But I think this is such an important topic to talk about. I know we've said this before, but Celtic Christians saw hospitality as a doorway into the kingdom of God. And I think that that's something that we've really felt over the years, that it really is one of those doorways into the kingdom. And so it's something that we can't emphasize enough as we move into the future, the need for hospitality as a way to be drawn into the kingdom and to help draw others into the kingdom.
Can I tell them how we purchased this house?
Yes, do.
Yes. Just at the beginning of our married life, I found a house that really is ancient for the West Coast, built in 1910, before the First World War and the first pandemic. And it's actually three apartments, 2-bedroom apartments stacked on top of each other. And the reason that we did this, we wanted to invite people to come and live with us, have a meal together every week, study scripture every week, garden on Saturdays once a month. And we have had a wonderful time meeting and getting to know people who are followers of Jesus in a much more personal way. And particularly young people are getting started. We love to help young people get launched because it's not an easy time for them right now.
Well, and we've had some amazing experiences, very unusual experiences at times. There was one time when two young men, I don't think I've told this story before, but we had two young men that came to our door and literally said, "Can we sleep in your backyard?"
Mm-hmm.
And they had found our intentional community on the intentional community website. And they were needing to be in Seattle because they were trying to get up into Canada. And because they were going to be working up there, they couldn't get across the border. They didn't have the right kind of visas. And so they said, we sleep in your backyard? And we said, well, no, not in our backyard, but our basement apartment is empty at the moment. So they slept there for a few nights, and then they did actually get to go up into Canada for a couple of weeks, came back and said, "Can we stay with you for a while until we get things sorted out?"
Yes.
And we said, "Oh, sure." By this stage, the downstairs apartment had been rented, but they slept in what we call our prayer tower.
That's right.
Sleeping on the floor, and literally spent a whole year sleeping up there and living with us.
Yes.
They were a huge blessing to us in
Yes.
so many ways. We often called them God's angels unaware.
That's right.
Because they did so much for us. They were such a blessing and an enrichment to our lives in different ways. I'm disappointed because I'd hoped on a trip a couple of years ago to be able to see one of these young men who's now living in Nashville, but unfortunately the trip was cancelled because of COVID, and I haven't gotten to see him for a number of years. But it's just I think a great example of how, if we're open to these things, that God can bring amazing people into our lives.
In fact, one of the things that they did out of gratitude is the stairway to the top apartment. When we bought the house, was the walls were really a shamble. The wall covering needed to be replaced, and we weren't able to do that. But they surprised us by replacing all of the wall all the way up the stairs, doing a very professional job. They bought us a new toilet for another floor.
And redid, the thing that I remember is the dining room table that we sit up at for so much of the hospitality that we do. They actually totally refinished it for us.
That's right, I'd forgotten.
And for me, that's a very, very special reminder of these two young men who I think have a very special place in our hearts. Not because of what they did for us, but just because of the way that we were unexpectedly able to share life with them.
And we have our prayer tower back now. And we're getting ready to welcome another young couple coming from the East Coast for our downstairs unit. And Christine can share more about that.
Well, we're just looking forward to having them here. The apartment's been empty for a couple of months because of renovations we had to do on it. And so we're just looking forward to having them, and they've got a dog. So our dog Goldie will have a companion as well, which is going to be very nice. And we're looking forward to once again having hospitality within the community here, but also being able to offer hospitality to others, because I think that that's part of what Tom and I love to do. In fact,
I'm so appreciative of what Christine brings to our marriage and to our house, particularly at Christmas time, the Christmas hospitality. And we had to tone it down last year because of COVID, but give them a picture of what our Christmas hospitality is like.
Well, part of what we love to do is have an open house where we often have 40 to 50 people come and enjoy various kinds of, well, all kinds of things. In fact, most of the recipes are going to be in the cookbook that we are in the process of putting together. There'll be shortbread, and there'll be my favorite fruitcake. There will be a cheese ball that I make that is usually the first thing to disappear. Last year, I discovered ginger cookies that were absolutely chocolate ginger cookies that were absolutely
Thanks
and
be to
utterly
God.
delicious, and have had fun with those. But because of the fact that in the last couple of years, we couldn't do our gathering here, I sent a lot of packages to friends and family because I thought I have got to not only do cooking at Christmas time, but I've got to feel that I'm being hospitable. And because we couldn't have people come here, the best way that we could do it was that I could send out packages.
Yes.
And the trouble is that now I can't stop sending out those
That's right.
packages, but we'll also hopefully be able to start having gatherings within the house again as well.
Yes, and speaking of hospitality, the hospitality I've enjoyed most over the years is the times we've gone to Britain. And it's, Christine tells me it's 9 a.m. here, it's 5 p.m. there. But because of COVID, we haven't been there since COVID began, and we are missing the lovely hospitality that we've experienced over and over in the UK, and the dear friends that we have there. That's been one of the hardest parts of this pandemic for me, is being cut off from so many good friends for almost 3 years.
Well, and it's interesting to me because the new topic on GodSpace, the blog, is embracing the wild hospitality of God. And part of what I've been doing while I've been thinking about that and thinking about doing this Facebook Live session is thinking about how much we have embraced the wild hospitality of God over the years. Celtic Christians used to call themselves guests of the world because they would go out not really knowing where they were going to find hospitality. And I feel as though without realizing it, our lives have been a little bit like that too, because we've sometimes gone out not knowing the people that we're going to be staying with, and yet have had incredible hospitality, not just in Britain, but literally all over the world. And I was thinking this morning about some of those incredible opportunities that we have had to experience the hospitality that others have given us. And seen, I've changed that expression, guests of the world, to guests of the world and hosts to the world. Because I feel that there are both aspects there. And I think that bringing those two together is in many ways what makes us really see that doorway into the kingdom.
And this is an opportunity for all of our churches. As I'm sure you know, our churches in all of our Western countries, we're seeing a decline in showing up for worship, decline in giving, decline in volunteering to reach out to our neighbors. And one of the ways to bring life back to the church is start little community groups where people meet once a week to explore how they can be hospitality to those in need in their neighborhoods because of the pandemic. So hospitality is an opportunity for the church today to reach out into our neighborhoods in ways that we just haven't been doing during the pandemic. So let God inspire you to find ways to be that good news to your neighbors.
Well, it's interesting to me because from what I've read, even though a lot of churches are going down in numbers, small groups and what's called dinner church, where they literally get together around dinner, have been increasing. Because these are the kinds of meetings and the kinds of interactions that people are really looking for. I think people are craving companionship. I think they're craving hospitality, and the kind of hospitality that we in the church should really be at the forefront of offering to people.
And particularly during these summer months, we can entertain out of doors, so there's not the same risk of passing on. The church that we go to, we all wear our masks in church, which is really sensible. And we do need to check out our conditions in terms of our vaccinations and so on when we entertain people. But doing events outside is part of what we're going to be doing this summer.
Yes, in fact, we're getting ready for our first barbecue in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
We're a bit slow because we were away enjoying hospitality of our own hospitality of celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary this last week. But getting
time.
ready for barbecue, the first thing that Tom does is makes his famous barbecue sauce.
And I've got to find the recipe and get started. It's been a while.
Again, the recipe will be in the new cookbook that we're putting together because
It's smoky and hot.
it is smoky and hot and delicious. In fact, I've had a couple of friends who've said, you really could market this stuff. It's better than a lot of the other barbecue sauces that I've ever tasted.
And it's seldom killed off small animals or good friends.
And it goes very well on anything that you want to put it on, really.
Yeah.
Not just barbecue, actually, but it really is very delicious. So I'm looking forward to Tom not just doing barbecue because he's great at doing barbecue, but also at making his barbecue sauce. And I can sit back on this one because he takes the front seat in terms of hospitality. And that's something I think that's been a delight for us over the years
I
too.
think so, because we both enjoy cooking. So I cook 2 to 3 meals a week in the evening, and she does the rest, and we have a great time.
Well, and when we do hospitality, sometimes I'll take the lead and sometimes Tom will take the lead. And I think it's something we heartily recommend to any couple, actually, even if you're not both that keen on cooking. I think it's a great way to interact with each other, as well as to, really be able to entertain people.
That's right.
So we heartily recommend it as a way of reaching out as well.
Because this COVID keeps coming in new forms, COVID-5 now is a new challenge. We do need to be careful and make sure people have been vaccinated and boosted. And so entertaining out of doors is hardly recommended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but whatever you think of, remember that hospitality is important for all of us. And I think it's a doorway to the kingdom, because I think that we have, through entertaining others and through, being both guests and hosts, as it were, we have really experienced glimpses of the kingdom in many different parts of the world.
Let me just share one model that I find very impacting and very important is the Covenant Church. The head of the Covenant Church in the year 2000 was a man who was reading Sojourners magazines, which is one of my favorites. And it emphasized there the importance of racial reconciliation. Well, he took this seriously, and as the head of the Covenant Church, within a year, they helped their first mother church become multiracial, seriously. And then they totally changed all of their church planning to only planting multiracial churches. And as a consequence, they've experienced much more growth, even during this time, than other groups. But they've also discovered how to be a church where we get to know our neighbors across race, class, and culture. And that's just like first century church, where the differences were overcome to be members of the followers of the community of Jesus.
Well, and it's a different form of hospitality, I think, because whenever we interact with people that are different from ourselves, whether it be race, social status, or whatever. It's a form of hospitality to, kind of have that kind of
Yes.
interaction, I think. Because hospitality isn't just providing meals for people.
No.
Hospitality, I think, is inviting people into your lives. And that can be, what Tom was just talking about, developing a multicultural community is a form of hospitality, because it means we have to be open
Yes.
to people who are different from ourselves.
And part of what we do in our house here is we have a meal together one day out of the week, where we have people on all 3 floors when we're fully occupied, taking turns cooking. But during that time, we share what's going on in our lives as followers of Jesus, where we're struggling, where we're in need. And particularly for young people getting started, they report that it's helpful for them to have older folks taking an interest in helping them sort out their lives in these very, very difficult times.
Well, but it's wonderful to be able to interact around the dining room table. And I think that, it's one of the most special places
Yes.
to interact with people of faith, with people who don't have any faith, because we really get to know them, and we get to see Jesus in the midst of them as well, I think. And that's so important.
And they do teach us and encourage us, and we learn a lot. As a digitally challenged old guy, I really appreciate their help in helping me use my laptop and connecting to this very technological world.
Fortunately, he married a techie wife.
Yes, that was a gift from on high.
And so I'm the one that, of course, sets up these kinds of things and keeps both of us connected over the internet at times too. Are there other stories about hospitality of what we do in the house? I mean, I can think of a number of different situations of people that we've had living with us that have come for different reasons. I mean, we had a young couple with 2 little kids that had been in Britain.
Yes.
And he'd gotten sick, and they came back, they had nowhere to go. And they ended up living in our basement apartment, or part of our basement apartment, I think for 6 months until he was better and able to work again. And again, we were so blessed, not just, they were good friends. They became good friends, even better friends in a lot of ways during that time. But as well as that, he also did projects for us because he couldn't work, but he could work with his hands. And he made the one thing I remember.
Shelves in the garage.
Shelves in the garage, bookshelves for me, and also made a plaything for kids that was there, I think, for at least 15, 20 years before it finally fell to pieces and we had to get rid of it, which in some ways was a shame. But, we have been so blessed by the people that we've been able to offer hospitality to, either over a meal or through them coming into our house. And I know people say, well, haven't you had negative experiences? And we have had 1 or 2, but virtually nothing.
No,
which over 30 years is amazing, really.
It really is. And we've learned a ton because they have educated us in so many different ways, not just for me learning to use my technology more effectively, but their insights into aspects of culture that younger people are struggling with that I didn't know about. And so we appreciate being students and learners as well as providers of a new living situation, because they really seem to enjoy the Garden Day month. Right now, last year we had how many pounds of tomatoes?
Oh, about 100, I think.
100 pounds of tomatoes, and our apples.
Well, we had 400 pounds of apples.
From 3 little trees in our parking strip. And they help us harvest these, and of course, they help us eat them as well.
And
So-
process them and give them away.
Yes,
I think one of the aspects of hospitality that I think of when I think of the wild hospitality of God is the generosity of God.
yes,
And I think of that every time we do harvest something from our garden, or sometimes go foraging, for blackberries or for mushrooms, or, for some other kind of produce that we don't have in our garden. I'm aware of the incredible, generous hospitality of God.
yeah, pass me the book.
Yeah.
This book is not just a call to hospitality, it's a call to generosity too. And learning to be generous and find ways, particularly in the troubled times that we're going through that aren't over yet, that in fact, with the environmental challenges we're going to be facing the next 5 to 10 years, we desperately need to find new ways to be neighbors and new ways to take action to restrain the amount of energy that we're using and the kind of energy, so that we can preserve people from losing their homes, like's happened in the South this last week. The climate change issues we're facing are enormous. So we need to find ways to be God's hospitality.
Well, and to me, hospitality and gardening are very closely linked. Not because we garden, but it was interesting to me during the last recession how people who became gardeners were so generous with the things that they had. It kind of inspired in them an attitude of generosity. And I think it's true when we are recipients of the generous provision of God, it really does inspire us to be more generous to others around us as well. And that too is a form of hospitality. And that's why I think that the more people get their hands in the dirt and produce some of their own produce, or the more they cook and share share what they produce in that way as well, the more that whole kind of sense of hospitality, generosity, kingdom of God, we see it as being very much woven in together, I think.
Can I mention my latest book? Because the last book I did with Dwight Friesen, a good friend, is called 220's Foresight, 3 Vital Practices for Thriving in a Decade of Accelerating Change. And those practices have to do with anticipating some of the challenges facing the people in your church and your neighborhood, have to do with really researching innovative ways like business innovators do all over the planet, and then selecting those approaches that really reflect the hospitality of Jesus. It's a challenging time to be alive, but it's also a time of opportunity for followers of Jesus to create new ways to be God's hospitality and compassion.
Well, and I think that, excuse me, we are running out of time here, but I think that, there are so many different ways that we can express hospitality. And I think that it's true, kind of, and seeing what works and seeing what kind of helps strengthen people in terms of their faith with Christ and their walk with Christ, and helps that draw others into that walk, is one of the things that hospitality can really do. So I just wanted to finish with, I mentioned that Celtic Christians believed that hospitality was a doorway to the kingdom.
Yes.
So I just wanted to read out a Celtic rune of hospitality that I think really expresses this and is a good place for us to finish on. We saw a stranger yesterday. We put food in the eating place, drink in the drinking place, music in the listening place. And in the sacred name of the triune God, he blessed us and our house, our cattle and our dear ones. As the lark says in her song, often, often, often goes the Christ in the stranger's guise. And I think that's such good wisdom.
Lovely,
because I think that
lovely.
it's often in giving hospitality to strangers
Yes.
that we really do
Discover.
encounter something of Christ.
Absolutely.
And that's certainly been our experience. And I hope that, it's your experience too. And I'd love for you to share any stories that you have in this regard in the comments of how you have experienced and how you have given the hospitality of God to others. So thank you for being a part of
We'd
this.
love to hear from you.
We really would.
And particular friends in Britain, Australia, New Zealand, we miss seeing you.
Amen. Thank you for being a part of this.